everybody, welcome back to Mask of the Slasher. We are on episode 32.
Whee!
This week, as promised, we're going to discuss dead hookers. This movie, Maniac, it came out on December 26, 1980. Merry Christmas. That's quite the date to choose to put it out. I always wonder when people think that that's a good idea.
Good for the whole family. Just after Christmas festivities, take your family to see Maniac.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
So this movie, like every other movie I have watched, I watched it about 20-something years ago, and I instantly loved it. Not just the fact that the gore, once again, as you can tell I like gore, is fantastic in it, but it's just a good, creepy movie.
Yeah.
I mean, when did you first see it?
I think whenever you showed it to me, honestly.
That was probably I don't know, early 2000s when I first saw it, and then you would have been like, what was that, 2008?
Yeah.
Something like that, 8 or 9. Around Christmas time, also, if it was the same time frame.
Yeah.
So anyway, for some reason, though, I thought I had owned this. I don't know how you saw it if I didn't own this.
Yeah, you definitely showed it to me.
Yeah, so we don't know. But either way, we splurged.
Yeah.
We bought the 2-disc edition that it's magical. It is newly restored in 4K, not that my TV picks that up, but it was. And the picture did look pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, it looks
was not all
excellent.
grainy and shitty. And,
yeah.
And there are a lot of bonus features on this, which I will go through in a little bit. But definitely. I think this was only like 15-something on Amazon.
Not bad.
Yeah, well worth having the Blu-ray just for the sake of having a smaller box on our shelf. I know that's dumb, but...
Well, but...
I like small boxes.
Well, so do I.
Anyway, so this movie starred and produced by Mr. Joe Spinell.
Yeah.
You would know him from movies going back to The Godfather.
Yeah.
And a whole shit pot of other movies that I don't even know. I know it was like Taxi Driver was in there. I mean, he was just in a lot of movies.
A ridiculous amount of credits.
He did. And on this amazing Blu-ray, there is the story and a poorly done documentary about Joe Spinell because he is no longer with us. So, it
was just a little outdated. Felt dated. The
Yeah.
documentary. I mean, it got the information across just
did.
fine, but yeah, it definitely was
a
a product of its time.
It definitely was. Product of the 90s.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But Joe apparently was just a very enthusiastic actor. He wanted to be in any part he possibly could be in. Even if his head was covered, he wanted to be in it. So, but it got to the point where he was just like, I want to make my own horror movie. I want to do this. So him and the director, William Lustig, they decided to start doing some research, and they would go and see any horror movie that was in the theater at any point. Apparently even like 3 in the morning. They'd just go to these theaters and go see it on 42nd Street. And which, from what I understand, was pretty rough back then. I don't know a lot about New York, and this movie makes me not want to go to New York even more than before. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, just But anyway, so they decided to go for it. And here's the weird part about this is that the budget in the documentary, it is mentioned that it started at $48,000. And after some more funding was put in, the budget was $130,000. But then you go and look at stuff like stupid Google, and it says $350, maybe $550, and that in the box office it made $4.5 million. I don't see that happening back then in 1980. I mean, I guess it was a very controversial movie. A lot of people felt like this was showing abuse towards women.
And Bill Lustig also directed the Maniac Cop movies.
That's ironic, isn't it?
So he is very good at these sort of gritty, street-level horror movies. Kind of interesting, like this urban horror kind of thing.
That is interesting. I wonder, is he just based in, like, New York?
He is a New Yorker, I believe.
There you go.
Not sure, but don't quote me on that.
Well, and so is Joe Spinell. The main actress in this, the photographer, they actually hired her to be an Italian photographer, is what they said. Now, ultimately, I think she had, like, an Australian accent.
Yeah, she was a Bond girl.
Oh, she was.
Because I looked that up because I was like, where have I seen her before?
It's because you liked her boobs.
And she was in The Spy Who Loved Me.
Okay. You liked her boobs.
We didn't get to see them.
I know. He was hoping to see him. Then you were like, I know these boobs are around here somewhere.
No, I just knew I'd seen her before, and it's because I watched all the Bond movies so many times as a kid.
Likely story. Spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen this yet, you need to go see it before finishing this video, and then come back to us.
Yeah.
We'll wait for you.
We will. We'll leave the light on for you.
Thanks, Tom Bodette. So, essentially, this man, they don't really say it, but it looks like he's either the maintenance or manager guy of this apartment building. Because he lives in the dumpiest of dumpy studio apartment. I think that's kind of garbage, by the way, that you're going to be working for the company and you have to live in, like, the shithole downstairs. Right. He lived in this little dump downstairs, and there was no windows or anything like that. And the only reason we figured out that he was maintenance or anything is because he had keys on the wall, and it looked like there was writing on the wall that said something like apartment numbers
written on the wall.
Why that mattered, I don't know, but
well, that was my question. Was that like stuff? Was that for him, or was it stuff about his victims? Like, was it apartment numbers of victims,
exactly.
or like were there the keys that he had taken from people that he'd killed?
That's what I'm saying. It just seems strange that he had a specific key box for these keys. It wasn't just randomly thrown into like a cigar box like normal serial killers.
True.
Yeah, but I've heard a couple different things about where this story comes from, which I will get back to in a second. And so we'll discuss how the whole thing about this movie, the whole storyline of this movie, and then we can go back to that because it's very interesting.
Yeah, because it feels like a little bit Ed Gein and a little bit Son of Sam to me.
Well, we'll get back to that.
Okay.
We'll get back to that, Josh.
All right.
So this gentleman, he just goes out and he finds women, the first one being a prostitute, hence my jokes about hookers and them being dead. He, just lures them in by his normal behaviors. And suddenly he just snaps.
Yeah.
And he starts to see the woman's face changes between her face and his mother's face.
Right.
And he's strangling this woman. And I have to say, by the way, I noticed, I even made a note of it because I'm a dork, how long the strangle scene was. It was so realistic because every time I've listened to people talk about strangulation now, it's like, oh, well, it's not as quick as movies show.
Right, it takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time. And it did, except she kept making noise.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your shit would have been collapsed by now. It should have, but that's beside the point. So he kills the woman and then he scalps her.
Right.
And then he takes her clothing and he purchases a mannequin and he puts the scalp with hair on this mannequin and the clothing. And while he's in his apartment, he's talking to this girl as if she's alive and well and everything's cool. But he's also has conflicting information with, he's hearing voices from his mom.
Yeah.
And it's also voices from his own head. It's like a combo platter of crazy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how this movie goes along. I don't want to say everything, but that's essentially the lineup for it, is that it's, he's hunting down people, killing them. It does not seem like there's a lot of correlation, except they're pretty girls.
Right.
And they pose in pretty ways. And his mom, when you do see her face, she is very made up. Very dolled up with red lipstick and the whole thing, which is not normal.
Was she a prostitute?
That's the thing, is that it's never said.
Or just a slut?
She was a hoe. Faux show.
Sorry.
Yeah. She was a trollop.
Street walking cheetah.
A lady of the night.
Yeah.
He wanted to have an inside look into what a serial killer would think and act and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I noticed is him rocking himself. Now, to be a little dark here, I actually knew somebody who did this to go to sleep.
Oh.
And it was just a comforting thing. It was a little nerve-wracking being near that person when it happened.
I'm sure.
But it was, in fact, something that really does happen. He did an amazing job of portraying a serial killer.
Yes.
He plays normal really well. He knows how to sweet talk. He knows all those things. Just an average guy, even though he's not very attractive. He's an average guy, but then it just snaps.
Right.
And then he's a killer.
Right.
And that is because you can't judge a book by its cover.
That's right.
You don't always know if somebody has mental illnesses. Let's go back to where this story comes from.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what I had heard too, is the Son of Sam or David Berkowitz was a big part of this. People were on edge after the Son of Sam thing.
Right.
And there's also a great documentary on Netflix about him, by the way, that takes forever to get through, but it's fantastic. So it's pretty fascinating because I'm into a lot of the true crime way before everybody else.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out. By the way, his death.
Yeah.
We should talk about that for a second because
Yeah.
that's interesting too. There is no straight story for it. He's a hemophiliac, which means that you bleed out easily.
Right.
A couple theories to throw out there, and I'll tell you which one I think is the best, but that he was taking a shower, he fell, he cut his head, and he bled to death. Another one is a heart attack. Another one was from heartbreak because his mom had died a few years prior to that, and he basically had just lost it after she died, which is ironic because...
That's what...
yeah.
That's same as the movie.
Exactly. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I personally think it's the shower situation where he
Right.
just collapsed from probably not necessarily an overdose per se, but just a combo platter of all those things together. And because of him being a hemophiliac, apparently there was just blood all over the apartment. And there was a specific prop that is used in the movie. I don't want to say what it is, but it was sitting up on top of the television when the police came in. I'm sure you could figure out what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And it scared the living bejesus out of the cop.
I'm sure.
And some of the interviews that they would do for people coming out of the theater, they'd be like, I just don't like it. Yeah. There was the one guy that came out and he's like, I don't think it's that bad, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it was any more or less violent towards women than any of the other horror movies of the 80s.
I think it was a big portion because of the David Berkowitz stuff. It really scared a lot of people.
Right.
Understandably so.
Oh yeah, it's terrifying.
Anytime, a serial killer is on the loose and, they're usually after women.
Right.
It's terrifying to those women. And so I get that.
I lived in Iowa in the 80s, and we always locked our doors.
Yes.
And I think it's because my mom had watched so many horror movies.
Probably. See, horror movies are educational and helpful. You never know if Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, any of the above is going to come to your door, or Joe Spinell.
Or Joe Spinell.
And he's going to scalp you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it with this movie.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10 of gore, this is definitely at least a 9 to 10. It's like peaking right there.
It's right there.
It's such a good job of it. It looks so realistic. Some major portions of it, not all of it.
Right.
But once again, it was back then low budget.
And every horror movie back then always almost has a few things that don't work.
Yeah, like brightly colored blood.
But then there's so much that does work that it doesn't even matter.
Yes.
I've said that with a couple of movies we've talked about, and that definitely applies here as well, because the good gore is 10-10 great gore,
Exactly. Well, and it's the practical makeup.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you have to put more thought and patience into this, because Tom Savini did this. If you've watched any interview with him, the man will talk about how he was in Vietnam and he saw dead bodies and he took pictures of them. And it all kind of burned into his brain. I'm sure there was some PTSD involved in that.
Yeah.
But that helped him create what he did. And that brought him joy, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably wasn't the healthiest way to deal with your
Right.
PTSD, honestly, but look at how successful he was.
Yeah.
So because of that, he just is able to convey realism in his makeup, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Anything else you want to say about it?
No, I like this movie a lot. It's got everything. Gore, up the wazoo. Good performance from Joe Spinell. You know, well-written story, I feel. Moves along pretty quickly. It's kind of like a reverse Giallo.
It is.
in that they take out the murder mystery element. You know who the killer is from the beginning, and it's from the killer's perspective, that just occurred to me when we were watching it last night.
But what's funny is that they did also mention that Giallo was some of their inspiration. It was a great movie, though. And I definitely recommend it. I do not think in this day and age that it is any more violent than anything else out there. It's probably a little tamer than a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, if you like gore, which you know I love, I've said it 1,000 times, and you like quality gore on top of that, not just some boo-boo gore, you know. Nobody wants that.
No, they don't.
Then this is the movie for you.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
100%.
And there's even some really great corny music in it. You know.
Would it be an 80s horror movie if it didn't have corny music? I mean...
There's always a scene, a photography scene where there's some corny music. Yeah. And if I can find this music specifically, I will also link that because, it's a gem.
Yeah.
It's something.
Yes.
It's definitely something.
Something special.
Anyway, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for episode 32.
Yes.
Please.
Please like and subscribe.
Yes,
please. It don't cost nothing. You got nothing to lose.
Yeah, you really don't. And we would appreciate it.
Yeah,
please share and continue to watch us. And next week we're going to come back with something, I think, a little weirder. I think we're going weird with next week.
Okay.
Because why not?
Why not? Because we can.
That's right, because we're rad.
Yeah.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.